Or what? Yeah.
Okay. We are live now.
Oh, we're live now.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, John. Welcome back to Q&A with John Worthington. I'm Terri Stangl, joining John from Connecticut. And today we're going to kind of pick up where we left from the last Q&A. We were talking a lot about beliefs. Mm-hmm. And I thought today I wanted to ask you about something you talk about in your book, which is how some of the concepts in the book are a belief structure.
Okay.
And maybe we can kind of build on what we were talking about beliefs in real, like, well, how does that relate to a belief structure? What is a belief structure?
Okay. A belief structure is any system of belief, I guess we could say. Okay. There are various religious belief structures that are familiar. For instance, there's a difference between a Protestant and Catholic belief structure, in as much as they're both Christian belief structures. But one of them says that the authority of the church, or the authority of God, actually rests in the Pope or within the church itself. Whereas the Protestant belief structure says that the authority of God exists in the individual. And so those are two different structures entirely. One of them says that I have to go to the church for all things to do with God. And the other says that, no, you have to do that yourself. You got to be responsible for yourself and behave yourself, because that's what you do, not because that's what the church does for you. The church can't do that.
Okay.
And now within the Protestant set, for instance, there are a number of belief structures, such as, let's say a literal interpretation of the current words of the Bible, a current interpretation of what people think the translated words of the Bible are, and so forth. Okay. And some of those come up with rather strange concepts. For instance, they actually changed the way that the Bible is interpreted, which is where hermeneutics comes into this, because hermeneutics is how something is interpreted, really. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, it's in how you interpret belief. Because if you believe one way and you interpret that belief a certain way, then you have certain actions that have to correspond with that belief. And then you believe another way, and you have certain actions that have to correspond with that belief. So, for instance, in the Catholic Church, it's necessary to go to confession, because you got to go get somebody to go as the go-between you and God. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Protestant Church, one speaks to God oneself. Okay, and so mm-hmm. those are fundamental structural differences in the way people believe about their relationship with God Himself, whoever or whatever that concept should be for that person.
Okay, so does the having one structure or another, does that become a kind of measure or framework to decide what will I believe or what will I do? It becomes something, other things fit into it. Is that what the nature of the structure is?
I don't think that ever gets up to the level of decisions, perhaps, except for maybe some people. Okay, but for the vast majority of people, no. It seems to be an unconscious choice of some variety. Okay, although it's a choice nonetheless, but it's still it's not necessarily something that somebody can give you the reasons why they believe that thing. It doesn't seem to work that way.
But here you come along saying these concepts that you've explored and talked about could be deliberately chosen as a structure to work with. So you're posing that as something that can be.
Well, it doesn't mean that it can't be. It just means that it usually isn't.
Okay.
I mean, it truly, we don't really have a way of describing these things for ourselves, and at least not in common language. Okay, not in. I mean, I can't go out on the street corner and sit down and say, hey dudes and dudettes. I want you all to pay attention to this thing here and tell me, what do you think about hermeneutics as it applies to the political aspects of
Yeah.
the Trumpism or Bidenism, as you'd like.
Yeah. That isn't
No one's going to know that. We're going to say,
right.
John, go back inside and read more, would you?
Okay, but at the same time, you're saying again, whether or not we think about it, these things are always in operation. That this seems to be part of how we think, whether we have words for it.
Okay, let me put it a different way. The operating system in my computer operates all of the time, no matter what I'm doing to the computer. No matter where my attention is or where the computer's attention is at the moment. So, for instance, at this moment, my computer's attention is on the StreamYard program, and it shows you and me on the thing with a nice background of Puerto Vallarta.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not what the operating system is doing. It's just is a fraction of what all the operating system is doing at the moment. But that operating system is making choices, but they're on and off choices essentially. But it's making choices which are affecting what's happening on my screen at the moment.
Okay,
the same thing is true. The same thing is true for the human biocomputer. The operating system continues to work continuously throughout all of its parts, and the operating system is all the programs that are at least potentially discernible or describable in programming language.
Okay, so if we've got a belief structure, then that's operating all the time, and it's going to have an effect on what we do. But there's no thinking about it. It's just there. It's doing what it does. It's
in use. So again, it's that same thing that we were talking about before about you can't see the color of your eyes. They're in use. Okay, how are you going to take them to? Hey, stop! I want to see how this is working. It's difficult to do that simply because we don't have a way of doing it. So that becomes a problem for folks. Is that, okay? How do I find this thing that I believe is real? Well, that's where there are ways. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. All right. So you had mentioned briefly this idea of hermeneutics. So let's touch on that a little bit more. What exactly is hermeneutics, or what does that mean?
Okay, hermeneutics is kind of a way of examining, language or meaning, perhaps. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It essentially is how we interpret something. Okay, and you have to consider that thing carefully, because interpretation is not what it ain't as simple as it seems. Okay, in other words, for instance, if you're interpreting Spanish to English, there are phrases that just don't get across. They're not the same. Okay, a simple phrase, for instance, that you hear in Western Mexico a lot, especially in the Jalisco area, is you hear this phrase called, or people telling people, aguas. Okay. And you think, why are they talking about water? Well, if you know the context of the word and why the word is used and what the word meant in the context, it makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. You see, once upon a time, the city of Guadalajara, which is the capital of Jalisco, has in Guadalajara, the state government buildings are in the very center of town. I mean, they're right downtown. Okay. And so the congressmen and senators and various officials that would have to go to work every morning and go from where they were in town to the center to go to their offices had to go through a lot of, shall we say, well-to-do homes. Okay, and in these well-to-do homes back in the day, plumbing wasn't really a thing inside.
All right.
And so there were depositories in the evening that one used to relieve oneself of one's excess.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that one. Okay. And so in the morning, chambermaids, hence the name, would go to the balcony and toss aforementioned product over the balcony side onto the street below.
Mhm.
And so a law was passed that before they were to throw such material over the side of a balcony, that they were instructed to shout "Awas!" Before such material went crashing to the pavement.
So the equivalent of
Thus,
timber, yes.
thus protecting gentlemen and their clothing from awas.
Yeah.
And so it has since become a word of caution. So you'll see kids playing, beating a piñata at their birthday, and if they're swinging the stick really wildly, all the parents will say "awas," which means to be careful with what you're doing. Okay, don't
Okay.
don't
Yeah,
throw that
I would
water over
never
the
have
balcony.
guessed that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, all right. So hermeneutics is how we arrived at the contextual meaning of that idea, because we have to understand what people believe when they say that word "awas" in that statement. Okay,
Sure.
they have to believe it. Well, the same thing can be true about a whole lot of things. Here, let me give you another one of those. Okay,
Okay.
Domingo is the name for Sunday, right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's the Spanish word for Sunday. Now, you'll hear people say, particularly kids, they'll say, I'm waiting for my Domingo. And they say that Sunday morning. And you say, well, Domingo's here already. And they'll say, no, my Domingo. Now, what they mean about that is that they mean they're waiting for their allowance. Because back in the day, when the Spanish came to Mexico, instead of being farms and ranches, what they had was haciendas, which were essentially ranches, but in a kind of different construct, more of a Spanish construct than an English construct,
Okay.
obviously. And so on the hacienda, many of the people who worked there were slaves. They were paid, and they were supposedly free people, but they were actually slaves because the patron, or the owner of the hacienda, actually had control over their lives. And so they were given a pittance of money for their payment every Domingo on Sunday. And so they all went into the company store or the company offices or the hacienda office, and they got their Domingo. And so still today, people who get their weekly allowance, they talk about it being their Domingo. So you have to understand the context of that word in order to understand its meaning. Okay, because it doesn't mean Sunday. Well, it does, but it also means your allowance for the week that you get on Sunday,
Okay.
because that's the end of the week, you see. So, so hermeneutics then would be the study of the context of what somebody believes to be real, or the interpretation of what they say in relationship to what they believe is real. So, for instance, the last time we were talking about how we cherry pick ideas, okay?
Right.
That we say, okay, yes, I'm a good Christian. I believe in Jesus, and I've been saved by the blood, but I lie a little bit on Saturday, okay, and Monday, and Tuesday, and Wednesday, and so forth. And on Saturday night, if I'm more than 50 miles away from home, I may not be as righteous as I normally would be, especially if I'm more than 50 miles away from home.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing is that tells me pretty much how you believe about your Christianity because of what you do. If you truly actually believed what you say you believe, then you wouldn't be a different person on Saturday night or tell stories and so forth. You'd actually be consistent within what you believe and what you do. Now, that you're not is where we give rise to hermeneutics, because hermeneutics is defining how we interpret what your actions are. So we could interpret in a liberal form and say, well, what do you expect? She's only human. We could interpret it in a fundamentalist form and say, if it says that you don't lie, that means you don't fucking lie, ever. You can leave stuff out, but not lie. Okay, which
I'm middling there. Okay, yeah.
there we go. Okay, so you see, it depends on how you interpret that statement. Okay, and in religious texts, oh my Lord, what it does to religious texts. Okay, which is the reason why why the idea came about at all, is that hermeneutics, being related to Hermes, the god of language and the trickster, and he did a lot of stuff. The boy got around. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and anyway, that's where it came from, hermeneutics. Okay, because you got to interpret what it is that somebody's saying. Okay? Because you can't. The words not the thing.
Right. So you
So
would
it has to be interpreted.
So you would interpret what somebody's saying in light of what they do in the context, and you would start looking at the context by partly looking at what they say. I mean, they would go.
Oh no! All of it's got to go together. It's all one. It's all one thing. What we say in hermeneutics is called a hermeneutic circle. Okay, it's like the action produces the interpretation or the belief. The interpretation of the belief produces the action, and it kind of goes around and around. Okay, that's how it's thought of, and you kind of have to think about it that way in order to see it in context, right? So you have to use that. How that is used is it's a way to determine what somebody believes really. Okay,
So
go ahead.
I have a question on this, because all of a sudden I started thinking about, there's this phrase we talk about in politics called dog whistle, where certain words and phrases trigger a whole set of images, beliefs. It means something within a certain context. It's like it's never said directly, but boy, you use that key word and the whole picture lights up.
Right.
Is that taking advantage of that kind of hermeneutic connection?
I suppose you could call that taking advantage, but not necessarily. Okay, I mean, in part, I think you're right. Okay, but I think you need to expand that just a little bit more. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hi, Paul.
Hey, folks.
I think you need to expand that idea just a little bit. Okay, I think you need to stretch that idea out to the point where you're saying, okay, look, you're using this dog whistle, and you're telling me that you're this innocent person with your dog whistle. You're saying, oh, but that phrase doesn't really mean what you're saying, except to us. And so now then I know what you're doing with that phrase. I don't know what it means, and I don't care what it means, really. I know what you've done. And that tells me who you are more than what it tells me what you believe. I don't really care that you believe this or that. I mean, who cares? Everybody has a belief, right? They're like noses. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got several, maybe. Not noses, but beliefs, okay?
Okay.
People with several noses they're usually in freak shows and circuses and so forth, and you don't see them much, okay? They don't get out. Okay, but people with belief systems, unfortunately, they run rampant. Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance. Okay. Matt Gates.
Okay, so you on one hand, we're saying you can look at what somebody's doing with their communication, but you can also look at what the context or whatever says about what they believe. So those are all ways
more to the point, why they believe.
Okay.
In other words, how do they justify that action? What do they have to believe to justify that behavior? Why would you want to justify it? What are you trying to do with that justification? Let's take you, for instance, right?
Okay.
How long have you been screwing around with some of these concepts, justifying that you don't have to put them to use for yourself?
Yeah, a long time, probably a decade.
Okay, and so what does that tell me about what you believe is real?
Well, it shows you that they're not real for me yet, that I'm just...
What do you mean yet? They're not real for you, period, nor will they ever be. You don't give a damn about these concepts. You just find them to be interesting intellectual concepts, right?
A lot of time, yes, that's exactly true.
Yes, because you don't see them as practical as something to be practically applied to
Well,
your life. Now, excuse me. For instance, with Moshe, you keep on making the same mistake of insisting that you're right about things without checking to see. You do that. Okay, I'm not mad at you. I'm not telling you you're a bad girl. I'm simply saying, look, you're human. You do that the same as everybody else. Everybody does that stuff. Okay, you happen to have a bad case of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not mad at you about it. I don't care that you have a bad case. It's your problem. It ain't mine. I ain't married to Moshe. You are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't be honest with him, that's your problem, not mine. I don't give a damn. I mean, that's what you guys do to kink out. Well, kink out. Bells, whatever, melt your butter, girl. But don't tell me that you're trying to understand something when you're not. When you're just asking about it in terms of it being an intellectual exercise. I'm sorry, but that's Terri. That's really true for you. Okay, I'm not trying to embarrass you or anything. I mean, this is a true thing. People need to understand this and to understand why your questions are being asked, right?
Yeah.
Because for you, this is intellectual. To me, it's not. To me, this is every frickin' day. I have to use this every day to see what people are doing. I mean, people come into the tank office and they tell me all kinds of stories. I mean, I'm a target from people all the time because they don't like how I tell them stuff, like what I'm telling you right now. You don't like this. You go, how dare you talk to me this way? Well, it's not I dare. It's that I'm observing it.
Yeah, you're seeing what I'm doing. Yeah.
Well, I just can't keep my mouth shut. I used to. You know, I'm too damn old anymore to give a damn. So there. I don't think you wanted to hear that answer, though, right?
No, you're right. I didn't. And but
I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to hear that answer either. Hi, Paul. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Nice conversation to pop right into. But Terri, John's trying to point something out for you and for everyone else that's going to watch this, right? You go at this with an intellectual interest, and that's it. And you're going to spin your wheels for a decade, and you're going to wonder what happened to the time. And you're not going to assimilate, and you're not going to use the content. So,
yeah,
that's costly.
So here, okay, Terri. So let's apply that to what Paul just said. Okay. So okay, let's apply hermeneutics to see if we can accurately take apart what is going on for you at the moment. Okay. So Paul just said, okay, using what you said, you're going to spin your wheels for a decade.
Yeah.
Okay. Has that been true?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
That's what I did. Yeah, what I've been doing. Yeah.
Okay. Now that doesn't make you a bad girl. It doesn't give you any reason to to justify anything. Nothing else. It's just okay. You did that. Okay. Cool. Okay. Now the question is, was that a mistake or was that correct?
It was a mistake. I kept running.
How do you know? Whoa. How do you know that? In what context was it a mistake?
Well, it certainly was a mistake in the context of my marriage, because the same issue.
Wait a minute. I don't know that.
Well, it was also a context.
Okay, go slow. I don't know that. Can we address that a little bit? Why don't I know that?
You're not there. You're not in.
Right, and I don't know about the context of your marriage.
Okay, so we got to start something where we can overlap.
Okay, wait a second. You know about the context of your marriage. However, it'd be really difficult for you to report it accurately because you were involved in it at the time. And so
Yes.
your interpretation, okay, which is what we're talking about here, of what the marriage was and what the marriage became and why the marriage became that, may need to have a great deal of salt kind of put on it, kind of like catching a bird. Put a little salt on its tail, you catch him. You might want to really do that a little bit, because it could be that nobody had any fault at all. It could be that the entire event was a learning experience that was brought about from some entity more than your conscious self. That's also an interpretation that we could apply, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's stop for a second. In one interpretation, I was a bad girl. I didn't take advantage of the things. I was guilty. I didn't do this right. It was a mistake. That's an interpretation. However, it's also an action. It's an act. You're saying something that you believe, and as a result, you're expecting a result from saying that.
Okay, yeah.
That's what we do with questions. That's what a question does, right? Okay, cool. Okay,
let's say
so
something. Yeah, they're trying to do
okay,
something.
now my interpretation of it would be to say, okay, look, what if none of that were the case? What if there wasn't a mistake at all? What if it was all a schooling for you to be able to come to a place where you could do something that you weren't able to do before having that experience? What if we interpreted it like that? That then changes where you are, who you are, and how you are for your entire life. Simply from looking at it, a different interpretation of the same set of events.
In a moment.
Yeah. And actually at the moment, that's right. Okay. So here's the conundrum. Why on earth would you want to tell yourself that it was a mistake when you have the option of changing the structure of what you believe is true to the point that it gives you rhyme and reason, as opposed to giving you guilt and despair?
Yeah, it can be where
I mean, what's the difference? I mean, to me, it makes it easier. It's just me, excuse me, but it's easier to me to say, okay, look, I have reason to think that these errors I made, I learned stuff from them. I did. Did I do it on purpose? Not consciously, but did I do it on purpose? Yeah, I did. I have to admit it. Yeah, I did that on purpose. But did I think about it consciously and then decide to do it? Not there's no chance in hell that I did that. But this operating system was still operating all of the time, and I was the one that did the thing. It was this body right here that did it. It was this mind right here that did it. It was this spirit right here that did it. So, if I combine all that stuff up and I'm fair with my interpretation, and I say, it could be that I was a total screw up. Woe is me. Or I could say, I learned a lot of stuff from that. It was a damn good school. I'm better than I was. I'm smarter than I was. I'm older than I was. But you know what? I'm not guilty about doing anything bad. I'm fine. I have reason to talk to you. Boy, that just changes the entire complexity or complexion of what it is I want to do, or what it is who I am, what it is I'm about. I think that I could offer that. I think anybody could pick that up, and it's free to use if they wanted to. It's like you don't have to steal it or anything. Even I just give it to you. What the hell? If you don't want to use it, though, go ahead. You can suffer. I don't care.
Well,
it's your right.
Yeah, there's a lot of relief in that, and it's certainly.
Well, don't you dare! Don't you dare take advantage of it, though, please. No. It's got to hurt.
That was what I'm spending 10 years learning to change. Is that
yeah, that's it. Now I got it right. Okay.
Yeah. But
Paul, you've never seen stuff like this before, have you?
Yes. But I mean, look at that. Just one change of a belief and an event that's holding you down and keeping you down becomes something very different. It might even push you forward.
Yeah. And it's really in the interpretation of that, of those events, right? In other words, if I believe that I'm a terrible person and I'm a sinner and I sin, with sinners sin, haters hate, right?
Yeah.
Breeders breed, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But I could also say, you know what? I'm a learner. I've learned how to learn. I could also say that too, couldn't I? That would also be an accurate statement about the same set of events.
Absolutely, yes.
It's simply a way of how do I interpret the events, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
if your want is to be gloom and doom, guess what? You're going to interpret everything with gloom and doom, right?
You're going to interpret everything to get that result, right? So if you
That's right.
don't want the
Yeah,
doom and gloom,
oops, there I go again. That was as opposed to like, oh, look
Right.
where I'm going now.
you can reinterpret a lot of things with this.
Yep.
No, excuse my language, but yes.
This isn't a kid show, or what? Maybe it is, but say what you need to say, right?
Mhm.
Well, I see. This is the thing. When you start talking about belief structure, which is what you're talking about. Well, what structures your belief really? How do you interpret things? Do you interpret things with must it have gloom and doom? Must it be the worst possible interpretation about somebody? Must it be must it be that somebody's doing to you? That must it be that you're not big enough to go to the bathroom for yourself? What? What is it? What is the problem? Why would you want to interpret everything that way?
Yeah,
I
must
mean, that doesn't
everything
make
be
good sense.
done to you? Or what if these things are happening
For me.
you?
Or is
Oh, that can't be true. Mommy didn't tell me that it was true. It was done to me. Mommy said she was going to do it to me. So that's got to be the only thing that happens is done to me.
interesting.
Not interesting. It's a fact, kid.
It's bad, yeah.
Well, yeah, don't stay in that intellectual analysis place unless you're happy with it.
Well, yeah, it's like this is a shift. It really, I mean,
Yes, it is. It's a shift, isn't it? Because you see, what's happening here is that you're experiencing in real time an adjustment to a belief structure. Okay, it's your adjustment. I mean, I asked you a question. Okay, that's true. I did. I asked you a question. I said, okay, but you do this. Why do you do it? Okay, why would you use that? Why would you use that interpretation for that thing? Because that interpretation may not really make sense. I mean, it does, but there's other alternatives that make just as much sense that are much more useful.
Yeah.
And so why would I want to stick myself with a gloom and doom description of something or interpretation of anything in order to say, oh, but this is who I am and this is what I believe, because everything goes to shit for me. Oh, look, the humanity. Oh, gracious, what shall I do? What shall I do? None of that works, see? If I say, okay, yep, I did it. I learned something from it. I wish I hadn't done it, but I did, and so now I got to do it. I have to go at it again. And it's going to cost me to fix it and straighten it up. But okay, I'm a big boy. I can do that. But that interpretation is way different than the interpretation saying, oh,
Yeah, it is.
oh,
Yeah. Because it's much more of like so now where am I going from here with this little piece? It's forward looking. It's
okay. So what would you think? Where would you think that you would want to go with that then?
well, it's more like taking situations that arrive and just asking myself a different question. Like, what am I learning? That question, what am I learning, is a different question than I normally ask myself.
Okay, so let's stop and look at this for a second in terms of practicality. Can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you and Moshe fight, I bet you, every now and then, right?
Once in a while, yeah.
Yeah. You have a license, so it's legal, so you can. I got it. Okay, so okay, all right. So, but what do you fight about?
Usually, where I am self-absorbed or oblivious to something, so I'm not paying attention. That's a recurring thing.
Okay, so what are you doing in that not paying attention? Because certainly you're aware that he's saying something, because the brain works throughout all its parts, and your ears aren't cut off or anything; they still work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you hear something, but you interpret it as being non-essential to your life, right?
Yeah.
What if you change that interpretation to being something that is essential to your life?
That would be very different for me. Yeah.
Why would it be different?
Because I rarely think of things as essential to my life. You know,
Okay,
I
so
kind of
you don't have any value? Is that what you're saying?
well,
Or your relationship has no value?
that is, I guess that's a way.
There's a value issue here that
Okay, yeah.
appears. Okay, I may be wrong about that, but it appears as though there's a value issue. Okay, so that's why I'm asking about.
Okay, yeah, I can tell I'm like, no, there isn't. But like, wait, I'm slowing down, saying, well, if I really valued, then I'd say, well, I have to pick things that go along with that value or that build on that value. And the fact that I'm willy-nilly does indicate that there is a value issue there. That I'm not saying this is important enough.
Well, that's kind of thing. I think that's kind of a clumsy way of saying it, maybe. So let me see if I can say it a little more efficiently, so it makes just a tad more sense. Could we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so if I don't say this right, then you have to straighten me out. Okay, but it sounds as though that what you're really trying to say is something along these lines. If you treated your relationship as having value, or even as having necessity to you, then whatever Moshe was talking about was going to be fine, because you took the whole guy. You didn't just take the parts that you liked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't get just parts of a guy. You get the whole thing. You get the skid marks. You get the dribbles. All of it. Okay. You get the whole damn thing. You get the burps and the snoring and the body odor. All of it. Okay. You also get the flowers and the candies and the aren't you lovely todays and all that other stuff as well. But you get all of the thing, right? So the thing is that you're trying to cherry pick what you believe is real, or what you believe he can deal with as real. Take your pick. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's one. Maybe it's the other. I don't care. But you're cherry picking, and for whatever reasons, and over whatever issues, you're cherry picking what you want to get along with him about, and what you can just blow off. He doesn't. Yes, I see your mouth moving. I hear noise, but I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't really care. Motherfucker.
Okay, yeah. So that's putting a different belief structure on.
Interpreting.
I'm getting intellectual, but yeah, you're.
It's interpreting it differently, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's interpreting your actions within your structure of belief, rather than it's saying that your structure of belief justifies your actions.
Okay.
Okay. In other words, your system of belief determines your actions, and so if you have to change your actions, and you have to also change your system of belief. And in this case, the system of belief, or the structure of belief, says, because of what you're saying, is that you simply don't listen to things that he talks about, and you don't count them as important. You don't think that you think that he's just being Moshe, and so you're going to blow him off and ignore him. Mm-hmm. Whatever you do, I don't know. I'm not there. Okay, but
yeah, but that's for me to look at and say, okay, what am I doing? And is there another way to look at this that would actually say the relationship has value, that I have value, he has value, all of that, Yes,
it's like, when you agree with somebody, when you actually are in agreement with somebody, it doesn't make really any difference what they're doing or how they're saying it or anything else. You agree with them, so you say, okay, I wouldn't have done it that way, but let me see where this goes, because that person, I trust that person. I believe in that person. I think that person is a good person. That's the reason I'm married to them. That's the reason I'm in that relationship with them. So I'm going to trust what they're saying. Now, if you trust it and you trust it and you trust it and you see that there's a hole in the bucket, you stop and say, well, I don't mind that you go down to the bar to get beer, but take a bucket without a hole in it, would you please? Because, this is just, you're making a mess that I have to clean up. Now, that's not fair. Now, you can say that, but that doesn't ignore what he's saying or doing. That's involving yourself with what he's saying and doing, so that he can do it better. You see, that's a measure for a relationship. Okay, that's the reason why we talk about this in Dyad class, is because what you're doing is that you're saying to somebody, okay, it's you and me, and the good times, the bad times, all of them. We're in it together. Here we go.
Yeah. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I mean, this is the stuff that you have talked to me about, and I have to say that when I can you can kind of see you're about to go down the same road. That's one of the things in my mind is that I say to myself, look, just agree. What's it going to just find out? Just, you know, and just try it and let's see what happens.
Okay.
And,
all right. Now, with that statement, I'm going to go back to your original question.
okay.
What's the structure of belief? Well, you see, you've pretty much defined your structure of belief with Moshe, right? And you said, okay, I have to stop and I have to find that. I have to find where's the agreement? I want to know what the agreement is with him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to argue. I just want to know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You see, what that's doing is that's applying all of the functions of the playing field to what it is that you're interpreting that exchange of information to be or to mean. Okay, because at the heart of all of the do's, all of the agreements, of all of the functions, all of the being at ones and the harmonies and the specific functions and the natural mind functions, the empathy functions, the intuition functions must be agreement. And so that has to be the final arbiter of any relationship. What do we agree to? What do we agree about? What do we agree with? What do we agreed not to agree about? What? Define that. Because that's the thing that we're going to use to make things real. You and I, whoever you happen to be in the you and I situation. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, to go back to this now, Terry, I don't think you're a bad girl, but at the same time, I know that the reason why you're asking these questions are making a statement to me about who it is that you are and what it is that you really want to know.
Because they're so abstract and intellectual, and also
there's a reason for that to exist, isn't there? In fact, what I've done is I've actually gone through and used what you said to ask you questions about what you mean, so I can find out what you mean, and I've used the hermeneutic structure to do so.
John, I don't think people realize that the context of their questions is a marker for how they're thinking and believing about that thing, right? It just They just don't realize it.
So, okay. So like with me, then you were just saying, okay, you've been asking about the structure, but what you really are asking about is this thing that's biting you. And you just kind of pointed to me. This is this thing you've been fighting about structure, and here's the key. Here's a place you can move differently. You know.
Yeah. Yep. Well, did it work?
So far.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing. You've also asked. Last time we were together, you asked me about practical, right?
Yeah.
You asked me about why it is I'm a practical motherfucker. Okay. Well, here's the reason. Because you see, to me, understanding what you're talking about is a practical application of hermeneutics. It's just, okay, let me use what I know here, and let me find out what the girl's talking about. She's not stupid. She's asking a question. She wants to know something. She wants to know something for her benefit. So, okay, great. I'm in. I don't mind her asking that question. I think it's wonderful that she can ask that question. But I also know that she doesn't understand it. Because there's some holes in what she asked.
Yeah, you've seen some of the tracks of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, right here today, you showed me some of those cracks. Live, yeah. You were showing me some of the cracks in it with what you were asking. Okay, that doesn't make you a bad girl. It's just I can see those. Okay, you can't see them because you're busy using those things to ask the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And when I ask questions, I do the same thing. I tell everybody what my prejudices are, what my presuppositions are. Same as everybody does that.
Yeah, right. I do.
That's the reason why I'm asking this question is because I believe this is true, isn't it? You saw that with Ted Cruz and the professor the other day, right? When Ted Cruz went and he said, well, which laws exactly do you think are prejudice, are racial about voting suppression? And she said, well, like the ones in Texas.
Speaking of context, yeah.
Yeah. You know, Ted, you let her know what your question really was when you ask it. Yeah, you don't. Well, did you eat the book when you went to Harvard, boy? What's wrong? What's wrong with you, huh?
Okay.
You see, even senators can't see what they're asking. They can't see what they're doing with the questions that they ask. Rand Paul is a great one with that one. I mean, he's just wow. Rand, you should take your feet out of your mouth every now and again. What the hell? How hard can that be? You're a doctor and you're arguing about COVID. What the hell's wrong with you, boy?
Okay. So I think that we've kind of come to the end of our usual time here.
Terry's like, enough, I can't.
No, it's good. It's like,
Oh, no, she'd go on for another 3 or 4 days. It's okay. She won't pay any attention to it, maybe, but she'll have it all stored to come back and ask you about 10 years from now, though. That's for sure.
The thing is, I have to realize it's like, okay, again, this is not a bad thing. I don't need to worry about the next set of questions I ask. I can just ask them, and we'll see where they go. Everybody will learn something, or at least I'll learn something.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about this, Terry. You're not going to change this from night to the morning. This is a habit you've had for a long time, right?
Right.
Okay, so you can't get guilty and say, okay, well, I didn't change it, because you got your brain's going to have to check all of the instances that you use that thing.
And it's everywhere.
And it's everywhere. It is. Okay.
No, I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. In other words, a belief paints the entire computer that color. Okay. It does. Yeah. Why do we talk about Big Blue? Because it's a big blue business machine. That's what it is. Okay. It is not a graphic machine. It's a business machine. That's IBM is. That's what it's for. International Business Machine, isn't it? And so that's their philosophy. So it's business. Well, it doesn't really give you room. It paints that computers. All those computers are painted that color. If you can use color as business. Business is a color, isn't it?
It's big.
Apparently
It's blue, right?
Yeah, it's blue. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So anyway, what we're talking about here then is something just a little bit more complicated, really. And that thing that we're talking about in that regard has to do with this. It's that, look, we interpret everything that we listen to. And so for you, in the coming days, for weeks, or whatever it is, every time that you ask a question, you now have another tool with which to interpret what that question means to you. I don't know what it means to you, really, nor can I ever know. But you can. And so if you know that you have a reason for asking that, and that reason that question is actually something that you're doing, and that thing that you're doing is going to result in an activity for somebody, either you or somebody else, then you can begin to see what that agreement has to be in order to reach the activity you want to accomplish. And that agreement will be based in what it is that you do with your question.
Okay,
Practical application
that
for
one I'm having to
hermeneutics.
chew on a little bit here.
Rewatch the video on that one.
Yeah. There was a lot in that one, so I mean.
Yeah, now you're trying to convince me that you're a lightweight. Oh, okay, I got you, Terry.
Yeah. No, I've got the broad brush. It's just like, okay, that. Yeah.
Oh, it's the application, you mean?
That's always the rub for me, isn't it?
Oh, Terry, what are we gonna do with you?
Yeah. Throw her back in.
Terry, this is the fun part. You get to walk away from this, and you are immediately going to have opportunities.
Absolutely.
Immediately. I mean, immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll be fun to talk to you the next time.
Cool.
Okay, Terry, behave yourself. We'll see you soon. Okay.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for inviting me.
Hey,
You're welcome.
Great to see you. Bye.
Bye.